right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are now going to have another incredible story, another narrative. And I've got to do this because I usually don't do introductions and we don't do bios and we don't do all that kind of stuff. But as I was kind of doing some research with Chris here, as I went over to his LinkedIn profile, and I'll be frank, I absolutely loved it because there's a couple of comments in there. It's like, hey, I did this, but it was an absolute bomb. And I did this and it absolutely failed. And I want to say that I absolutely appreciate that because of so often, and this is what we talk about with narrative, is so often there's these false narratives and we create these personas and people think that we're perfect. And the reality is none of us are. And so I appreciate that, Chris. And I wanted to say that to make sure that it's not really a bio, but I love that you did that and you're willing to be authentic. So I am super excited about this. So thanks for just taking the time out of your day to be able to spend with us.
Hey, Tim, pleasure to be here.
So let's get started with this because, again, I'm really interested to see where our conversations are going to go today, especially as we talk about our stories. But who is Chris? And I like to start this way, and just especially if, let's say we meet in an elevator, you got 60 seconds. Who is Chris?
Well, if I was meeting you in an elevator, I'd probably give you my resume, but I'll try not to do that here. I mean, people now, if they've heard of me, probably have heard that I've written a couple of men's devotionals, and the most popular of which is Daily Strength for Men, and that's a whole different story that we may not have time to get into. But having written devotionals, am I a theologian? Am I a pastor? Am I somebody with credentials? No, I'm absolutely not. I'm just an average Joe Christian. That's how I bill myself, and I think it's legit. I mean, I write things that I think will be interesting to me and hopefully interesting to other guys like me, and seems to work pretty well some of the time. So, yeah, you mentioned the failure thing. I think that my life, viewed honestly and openly, would be a series of failures punctuated by an occasional success.
Yeah.
Whereas we usually present things the other way around, which is, oh, here's what I've done. Pay no attention to those failures that I've had along the way. So I try to mix things up a little bit on LinkedIn and lead with the failures.
Well, and I like I said, it actually does leave in my opinion, it leaves a positive impression because it's like, this is a real guy. This is a guy that I want to talk to because if he's willing to share that he's already failed, I'm like, I'm there. I'm there, man. So I love it.
I'm a fan of Cleveland's pro sports team. So I mean, I'm a Browns fan. So I've experienced a lifetime of heartache. So,
Oh, good. So speaking of lifetimes, I mean, let's actually start back in with what we typically talk about, which is that false narrative or the belief that you had as you were just about ready to step into maturity, or even it happened during a kid. And sometimes these things are traumatic. Sometimes it's as simple as a move. But what were some of the beliefs that you had that you thought, man, I am going to be this kind of a man when I grow up, or I'm going to be this kind of a guy when I become an adult?
Well, I didn't have any real traumatic experiences when I was a youth or a child or a youth or even a young adult. I was blessed to be part of a very tight-knit, very functional family, I guess. I had two parents who were married for, I think, 62 and a half years when my mom died. They had their ups and downs, but they had a pretty strong marriage. I've got three older sisters, and we were a family of high achievers. I mean, my mom could do anything. My dad was a very strong personality, but really excelled at sports. Even in his later years, I mean, he won medals at the National Senior Games, which is the Senior Olympics, in his 80s after quadruple bypass. He was still out there on the tennis court winning medals. And he was going to get a gold medal, but he died too early. He died just before the Senior Olympics in 2022. He was slated to win a gold medal in tennis. So
Wow.
It's pretty hard to live up to the
I was going to say, that
was
creates
set.
expectations, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
when you have that kind of
huge
high
expectations.
achievement.
I mean, I had three older sisters. My oldest sister was and is incredibly smart. I think she was valedictorian of either high school or college. She read all the time. She spoke different languages. She has always been incredibly smart. So we couldn't outdo her on the academic side. We all tried, and we all tried to get good grades, but it was pretty hard to beat, somebody who's a 4.0. So my younger sister of the three, she was a very accomplished athlete. She had 8 college letters at a Division I university,
Mm.
4 in tennis and 4 in basketball. So, I mean, most people, if they can get 4 letters in one sport at Division I, is something. She had 4 letters in 2 different sports. And 2 of her sons earned 15 letters in high school. They did both soccer and cross country in the fall. So they earned 8 letters in those two, 3 in basketball and 4 in track. So, and one of them was valedictorian of his class. So, I mean,
So you're adding
her
all of
family
this.
is, yeah. And then my middle sister, who always had trouble because, her younger sister is an accomplished athlete, her older sister is a brainiac. She decided to go out for the swim team when she was, I think, a junior in high school. There was no girls swim team. So she went out for the boys swim team and lettered in boys swimming. She beat enough
So
boys. This is back in the 70s.
yeah. So
So, go
so
ahead.
I was curious because all of this put pressure on you, had a level of expectation. So how did that create or affect your understanding of who you were as an individual? Because we're all unique, and we know that. But as
Right.
kids, we don't always think that. I mean, like we sometimes are looking like I need to be like my older siblings, and so how did that impact you?
It was mostly positive, actually. I mean, I was the only boy and I was the last one, so I was spoiled rotten. I was
Mm.
spoiled by my parents and by my sisters. I didn't have to live up to everything that they did because they were girls and I was a boy. But um, honestly, it was just kind of expected in my family that you would do a lot and you either excel or you would try to excel. Um, and really, there were very few negatives growing up. It was not only sports, but we all played a musical instrument. We sang in choir. My parents modeled that for us. They joined the church choir, and then we joined when we became teenagers and did that. And the Christian aspect of our lives was woven in. But for me, I took a lot of positives out of it. Things like discipline, applying yourself, setting high goals, and then striving to achieve them. I mean, there's a lot of positives there. But one thing it really helped me with, from a positive standpoint, was dealing with failure. And if I can, I want to play a 1 minute clip from one of my favorite movies, which is Rocky Balboa.
Let's do it.
See if this comes through. I've got it queued up here.
Somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
That's a very underrated movie, Rocky Balboa. It's the one where he comes back, late in life and his wife's dead and all that. But, that's the kind of positives that I took from the way that I was raised was, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to fail, but you're tested and you're proven by what you do after that. Do you get back up? Do you try again? Or do you give up? Do you blame somebody else? So I have to say, on the whole, it was very positive, but I think there were two pretty negative things that I took away from that and that have been with me for the rest of my life. And I'd say I still struggle with them today. The first of those is that I am way too self-reliant. And the worst part of that is that I think I'm in control. So because I take on so much on myself and because I work so hard to achieve, I think that I trick myself into believing that ultimately I'm in control and that I do have a much bigger say in what goes on than is actually true.
Mm.
And that's come back to bite me in a number of ways that I'm sure we'll get into in a couple minutes. The other big negative that I have had as a result of this approach to life is that I value achievements and even striving to achieve much more than I value relationships. And again, that has really come back to bite me, especially in, I would say, the past 15 years. So tons of positives from, the disciplined, achievement-oriented approach to life that was modeled for me and kind of subtly reinforced growing up. But I would say that the two big negatives have been things that I've really struggled with and that have affected me pretty profoundly in the later stages of my adult life.
I think a lot of us, especially, and I'm just putting myself in your generation, there was a lot of that pressure to be successful or to excel. And it really, everybody had a little bit different. Sometimes it was sports, sometimes it was academic, sometimes it was whatever it was. That pressure to be good at whatever. And oftentimes we, like you said, we just skipped right over those relationships. So as we kind of look at this, and I'm really glad you brought those two things up, because I would say the vast majority of men and some women too, really, really struggle with, I will never live up to my parents' expectations, or I will never live up to my siblings' expectations. Whether those parents said that that's the expectation or not, that's what they adopted and said, this is what I have to do. So I really want to explore this component right now. When you look at these two negative things, and you can choose whichever way you want to go, but looking at this reliance on myself and the fact that I'm skipping over my relationships, what woke you up and made you realize, man, I got to change something? Was there a situation, a circumstance that kind of came up, and whether it surprised you or you saw it creeping up on you, but it just was a smack in the face to say, you've got to do something different?
I would say that a lot of things went bad starting about 12, 13 years ago. So let me kind of set the stage. So I'm a late in life entrepreneur. I and four other guys started a Wi-Fi company in good old Akron, Ohio, where actually Wi-Fi was partially invented in Akron. And that's a story that's way too long to get into. But you wouldn't expect Akron to be a place where you'd start a tech company, but
Right.
we did. And 6 years to the day after starting it, we sold it. And we sold it at a good amount of money. So I, as one of the founders and one of the owners, had a huge payday. So that was great. And I worked for the acquiring company for about 18 months, but some things happened and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I exited the tech world while I was still in my 40s with a big payday. So that was great. My kids were all in Christian school. They were all high achievers in school. They were all doing great. So I had, what appeared to be a wonderful life, as, Jimmy Stewart might say. But when I stepped out of the tech world, I really didn't know what to do with myself because I had been programmed to, set goals and achieve them. And most of those were in the working world. And so I decided, well, I've got some money to invest and I've got some time now. Let's get some things going. So the first thing that I did was I invested in a movie. I had no experience with any kind of media, but I read a script. I read the screenplay for a Christian movie called The Song, and I was just blown away. It was just a terrific screenplay. I had worked with the folks that were behind this movie a little bit in the preceding years, and I said, I'm all in. So I invested a pretty big chunk of money into this movie based on the screenplay, went and watched the filming of it, and just was really excited about this thing hitting the big screen back in, I think it was 2014 that it hit the big screen, and it was a box office bomb. This was the era of God's Not Dead, and these Christian movies were coming out and they were making 30, 40, 50 million dollars, and this is the year of the Christian movie. This very high quality Christian movie comes out, and I think it made $1 million total. And that was far less than the money that had been invested in the movie just to bring it to the screen. And then I found out you've also got to pay the theater owners to run your movie. So it was double whammy. So I was, 50th on the list of getting paid back, and there wasn't enough money to go around. So I I lost everything in that venture. Still love the movie, but from a business standpoint, it was a disaster. And about the same time, I said, well, we had been through our small church closing, which was really hard on the family. It was hard on me. It was hard on my wife. It was hard on the 3 kids. And then we'd ended up going to a megachurch, a campus of a local megachurch, to kind of regroup and recover. But I have a heart for small churches. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to start a business. I've got money. I've got time. I'm going to start a business to help small church leaders, because there's lots of them out there, and God knows they need help. Didn't know what I was doing, but I figured I'd get some smart people around me, and we'd have some conferences where I bring in good speakers who've got really great things to say to help these small church leaders. And so again, I, just applied myself, and I set those goals, and I went at it for about 3 years and lost another chunk of money at that, because conferences didn't draw attendees, and the speakers were great, but I just could not find a way to make this a successful business. Provided some good information, but tried everything, tried a radio show, tried all kinds of things to get the word out, self-published a couple of books, nothing. And the failures of these ventures and my kind of devil may care attitude toward investing the money that I had made did nothing to help my marriage. And there were other issues as well, but about 4 years after I stepped out of the tech world and went off on my own, my wife of 26 years said, we're done, and the marriage ended. So I have a theory about God, which is that God's the still small voice, and God's always there, and we're supposed to listen to him. And when we don't, God starts tapping on our shoulder. And when we don't pay attention to that, then God will use whatever means necessary to get our attention and to turn us around. So I think for me, it was the divorce. I mean, I still really wasn't listening too much after the failed business ventures. My kids probably weren't doing as well as they could be during this time. They were in high school and college at the time, but I was much too distant for them. But then the wheels completely came off with the marriage, and really, had me reevaluating a lot of things at that point.
So you're looking at this, and you talked about the fact of you valued achievement more than you valued the relationship. And then you couple that with this whole aspect of being self-reliant, and self-reliance leads to us not willing to ask for help. We believe we can just do everything on our own.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now, because of your belief of, hey, we can be successful, and the expectations of that, and then all of a sudden your wife comes to you and says, well, I'm done. What did that do to your inner soul, the inner parts of you? Because you looked at it like, oh my goodness, now you're starting to square one, basically.
It would have been much, much worse if not for one really important thing. But before I get to that, I would say that what I came away with was a realization that you don't fix relationships. You invest in relationships. You work on relationships. But I had approached my kids, I'd approached my wife, I'd approached a lot of things on the relationship side as problems to be solved rather than relationships to be developed. And I don't think I completely got it. I'm not sure I completely get it today, but I think the end of the marriage really had me realizing that I had been approaching things the wrong way. I was not valuing relationships. I was not investing in relationships. I was not listening to God. I was not following God in the ways that I should. I was trying to fix things on my own. I was trying to fix myself. I was trying to fix other people. I was trying to fix situations. I was trying to fix problems. And that's just not a reasonable approach to working with other people, living with other people, loving other people.
Why?
Because people are not problems. People are people. And I don't know. Again, this is not my strength, but I think I am getting a better understanding of the value of people and the value of relationships with people than I had 15, 20, 30 years ago. I'm still task oriented, I'm still achievement oriented, but I'm trying to balance that and have that in the proper perspective with what is really important in life. And at the end of the day, what's really important in life is other people.
Yeah, I'm going to pause here. We're going to go down a rabbit trail, and I always like to tell people that we're going to go down this rabbit trail because we're definitely going to hit this. This is way, way, way too important to ignore or to adjust or to just skip over. So when you're looking at this, and I love that you brought this up because I find myself in the exact same position where I tend to want to fix the situation or fix the relationship. And I guarantee anybody listening to this, that's your natural reaction. That's your natural tendency is to go and say, well, we can fix it. But you're saying that you realize you can't fix relationships. What made you realize, or what were the circumstances around that kind of epiphany? Because you're saying that there was obviously the divorce and there were several things, several big situations. But what really woke you up? Was it a mentor that mentioned something to you? Was it the fact that you were doing some inner search? What woke you up?
I think one of the big things that woke me up or that had me heading in a better direction, and I think that, when the marriage ended, I think I was getting on the right track. I just think it was too late for the marriage. Was interacting with men. I had been very competitive with men my entire life. Part of it came because of sports, but also part of it became with my own insecurities. I had sisters and not brothers. I didn't really hang out with a lot of guys growing up. I was a loner in general. I still am. I'm a pretty severe introvert. And so I kept men at arm's length in almost every situation. If I wasn't competing with them, I could team with men. I could work with men in different situations, but I didn't let them inside. I didn't let them know who I was. I didn't want to expose my weaknesses. And this went on for, the first 25 years of my adult life. So I'm in my mid 40s and I'm still doing this. I'm playing this game. And about the time that we sold the business, some guys at my church, we had joined the mega church. So I was at the main campus of the mega church, and they said, "Hey guys, if we got an offer for you, there's this men's ministry that we want you to do. It's a 2-year commitment. You're going to meet with a group of 12 guys every week for 2 hours. You're going to do this for 2 years. You're going to get deep into your Bible. You're going to bare your soul to these guys. They're going to know your every secret." And I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, who would want to do this, right? But the other part of me is saying, you have to do this. You are so tired of the way you live your life. I mean, I had maybe 2 men in my life that I would consider real friends who knew a little bit about me. And the rest of men I just had kind of transactional relationships with. And so I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this. So I went in and did this 2-year commitment. And, the old expression, it changed my life. It did. It changed my life. It changed so many things about me because men became much less intimidating to me. I realized that, in a lot of ways, we're all the same. We all struggle with something, right? We've all got wounds. We all are failures in various ways. We all have secrets. And the only way to get through that is to have a band of brothers, is to have guys around you who really know you and they love you anyway. They're willing to be with you anyway, even though you've told them all your dirty secrets. And so I did 2 more years with this group, a different group of guys, but I did 4 years in this program. It's called Christ-Led Communities, CLC. And then when that group ended is when I decided to write my first devotional. And in the midst of writing that first devotional is when my marriage ended. So I kind of feel like I was I was rounding the corner and I was, starting to get there, but I had too many, I had made too many mistakes, and I had hurt too many people, including my first wife, for too long a time. I don't blame her. It's over, it's done. But I shoulder a lot of the blame for what happened there, even though I feel like I was starting to come out of it. And I still feel like I'm learning. It's now what, 8 years later? No, no, 6 years later, 6 or 7 years later. Um, but that was the main thing, I think. And the other thing was that I got closer to God. I had, for lack of a better description, I'd always had kind of a transactional relationship with God. Hey God, can you do this for me? Hey God, I really need this. And then when I didn't need God, I pretty much ignored him. So that experience of being with men in a real way for 4 years, and honestly praying for these guys and meeting with these guys one-on-one and in groups, and having them invest in me, investing in them, and then in turn investing in my relationship with God, really did change my life in a significant way.
So I'm going to ask one more question. And I want to kind of couch this question, phrase this question, because there's a lot of people sometimes that are listening and they hear us talk about church, or they hear us talk about groups, and they're just like, man, that's just not for me. Mostly due to the fact of they're where we were, and the fact of it's transactional. It's like, why do I want a deeper relationship? Because I'm still in the transactional stage of a relationship. So I'm going to ask the question based on how would you talk to yourself back then when it was still kind of this, I'm not sure that I really want that relationship. What would you suggest we do? If you were talking to yourself back at that point, and you knew that you had to make a change, but you weren't sure if you really wanted to jump headlong into the deep end of having those relationships, what's the first step? What would you suggest we do?
I did talk to myself back then. And for me, it was, aren't you tired of living your life the way that you are? I mean, if you're honest with yourself, I mean, you know yourself better than anybody else does. There are some areas of your life where you're just beating your head against a wall. And if you don't have other men in your life who really care about you, who know you and care about you, and are willing to, if the wheels come off at 2 a.m, who are you going to call? And if you don't have somebody you can call who's willing to drop everything and come over and, and help you out of whatever jam you're in, or just sit and listen to you while you vent about something, then that's a big hole in your life. Now, I don't think I can convince anybody to do something about this. I think you have to come to a point of pain or realization where you say, do I want to live let's say you're 40. Do I want to live the next 40 years this way? Or do I want to take a concrete step to change this? Now, I'm a big fan of counseling. I went to years of marital counseling. I've been to individual counseling. I will speak very high, and most men don't want to go to counseling for the same reasons, right? I mean, why am I going to tell some total stranger my problems? Well, if you don't tell somebody, then it's not going to get any better, because you've done a lousy job of fixing it so far, right? So I think the key is to be honest, look yourself in the mirror, be honest with yourself, and say, what are you willing to do constructively to make yourself a better person and to give yourself a better life, a fighting chance at a better life? And the two main things are, you got to have a relationship with God, and you got to have a relationship with other men.
Totally agree with you on all accounts. So, well, I mean, we're going a little bit longer, but I think it's valuable. And like I said, we're going down that rabbit trail. Just swinging us back onto track. What are the things that you do now to craft and create your narrative? Obviously, there's hiccups and things in life, not stuff that we planned. But at this point, you're like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. These are my habits, or these are my routines, or these are the things that I do to be able to craft and write the narrative that I know I'm leaving a legacy.
One thing I learned from the business world is the importance of strategy versus tactics. So we spend the majority of our time in the business world and in our personal lives with tactical stuff. It's the day-to-day stuff that bogs you down. You spend 99.5% of your time with it. You don't really solve anything. You're just kind of keeping your head above water. But if you can invest some time in the strategy side, if you can vision cast, if you can say, okay, where do I want to be? What's it going to take to get me there? What are the main things that I need to do? It's not a New Year's resolution. New Year's resolution is, okay, I got to quit smoking, or I got to lose 10 pounds. It's how do I get to a significantly better place in the next 5-10 years? And so that's one thing that I do is I don't formalize it, but I like to spend time and really look at my situation strategically and set some long-term goals and put together some long-term plans. That's just a general thing. On the relationship side, I've got to thank my wife now. Her name's Libby, because she's really good at keeping me on track on the relationship side. One thing that we do is, and this is a small thing, but we watch something together on TV. It could be Netflix or Prime or something else, but we'll watch a movie or something every night, and we take turns who picks it. Now, it's not, we're not talking a whole lot. Sometimes we'll make comments about what we're watching, but it's a consistency where we're together, we're taking the time, we're letting each other pick. Because left to my own devices, I just watch sports every night, and she hates sports, so she'll watch Penn State
she picks the
football.
Hallmark Channel, you pick ESPN, and you go back.
Right. No, she won't watch it, and I won't watch Hallmark. But there's a surprisingly number of good stuff out there, and I can make her watch action movies. She'll watch. I mean, she likes Mission Impossible and movies that I like. But beyond that, we're splitting our time right now between Southwest Florida and Northeast Ohio. Wisely, we're in Southwest Florida right now,
because we're in the middle of winter,
right? And it's because it's a second marriage, and she's been in Florida since the late '80s, and I've been in Ohio since pretty much I was born. My family is in Ohio. I've got 3 kids now, 4 grandkids. She's got her family in Florida for the most part. But we invest in family wherever we are. So, I've got sisters in Ohio as well. We're always doing something with my side of the family when we're in Ohio, and neighbors and others. We're really taking the time to be with people, legitimately be with them, not just,
transactional, like you said earlier, right?
In the same place at the same time. We're actually spending meaningful time with them. And in Florida, same thing. I mean, we're 10 minutes from her mom, who's still alive. So she's over there quite a bit. I'm over there a little bit less. But so I just think that rhythm of, and the prioritization of people. So, not just making time in the schedule, but actually taking the steps to make it a good experience for everybody involved, and making it a regular habit. One thing that she got me started on that we do regularly in Florida is we play trivia with people. It's a way to get out. We have our trivia friends, we see them mostly for trivia, but we got plenty of time between rounds to talk about life, and it becomes it's kind of a party that's a low cost party where you're playing a game and you're also, mingling with friends. So I just think you have to be open to trying new things, but try to have those things be centered around building relationships versus just building yourself. I mean, I still play a ton of tennis. I'm a competitive tennis player, but I'm also coaching high school tennis at my sister-in-law's high school where her kids go. Takes a ton of time, doesn't pay anything. I could be doing a lot of other things,
right.
But I'm investing in these kids,
Exactly.
and I'm Coach Chris to these kids, and they get a kick out of it, and I try to make them better players and better people, and
I love it.
That's the things that I've learned in the past. I'd say 10 years is just, I've had some major changes, yes, but I think part of it is God just kind of nudging me and keeping me on that path. And I'm going to slide off every now and then, but trying to stay on that path of valuing relationships and looking at the big picture, trying to be where God wants me to be and doing the things that he wants me to do and applying myself and still trying to be the best person I can be in those situations.
Yeah, I love the idea and the concepts that you're talking and sharing about is intentional time with people and shared experiences with people, because those shared experiences is what's really going to build, and it opens up so much of that conversation, like you're saying, trivia or just spending time coaching, because those shared experience, people will remember that forever. And
Yep.
whether or not it's actually worthwhile when it comes to the financial side of things, it's infinitely worthwhile when it comes to building the relationships and being intentional about building the relationships. And I just love that. Love that. What is one thing, I mean, as we kind of wind down, what's one thing that you would hope somebody would take away from our conversation today? Or what's one thing that you're like, man, if you missed everything else, this is the one thing that I want you to remember from this conversation?
Well, I played the Rocky Balboa clip, so I don't want to leave people with that as the only thing they get from this if they remember that. I mean, Rocky's got some good points. I do think that, when we fail, we need to get back up, we need to dust ourselves off, and we need to get right back into the game. But I think sometimes we have to take a step back and say, why did I fail? Why did my marriage fail? And what does God want me to do as a result of that? And Libby gave me what has become kind of my life passage, or the passage in the Bible that is the most applicable to me right now. It's the beginning of 2 Corinthians. And I'll just read a couple of verses. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. So I've taken that to mean that because I've been through a divorce and God's brought me through that, I'm in a unique position now to talk to men who've been through something similar. And believe me, they are out there and they are hurting and they are angry. And some of them have been in that state for a decade or longer. Um, a woman who's had a miscarriage is in a unique position to be able to minister to, help
Right.
out a woman who's been through the same experience. So, does God want us to fail? I don't think so, but God knows that when we fail and when he brings us through that, we can then help other people who are going through something similar, and we're uniquely equipped to do that. Other people can't do that. I can't speak to certain people, but I can certainly listen to and speak to a man who's been through something like I have.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to this final question is, especially connecting on that level, how can somebody connect with you? How can somebody be, especially if they're resonating like, man, I need to talk to Chris. How can they get in contact with you?
Best way is probably my website, which is, it's my first and last name, chrisbolinger.com, but it's one L instead of two, and it's kind of hard to spell. So mensdevotionals.com takes you to the same place. Just go there and go to the contact page. That's how a lot of guys contact me.
We'll have those in the notes too. So if you're
Okay.
listening and you need to get them and you didn't catch it because you're driving or you're painting or whatever else it is that you're doing, it'll definitely be in the notes, and you can make a note to be able to go back and find it and then be able to link out to the website. So perfect. And then so this is another really quick rabbit trail, but I just have to ask because of the popularity of the sport and where it's going. And you're in Florida. As a tennis player, do you support the movement with pickleball?
Well, I probably would answer this differently, but one of my best friends who I played tennis with for 20 years when we were both in Ohio, we probably played 800 times. He has become like a champion pickleball player now, and he may be listening. So I would say, as long as you guys are far enough from the courts that I can't hear that constant pinging, I'm all for it. And, I've played a couple of times. I think the strength of pickleball is that it's very approachable.
Yeah.
It's easy to pick up. I won't say easy, but it's relatively easy to get out there, pick up the game. The games are relatively short. So, yes, it's amazingly popular. You can
Yeah.
play it indoors. You can play it on almost any surface. You just
Yep.
need a net. But as a tennis purist,
You're
I don't
struggling.
think I don't think my future is in the game. I think I'll play it for fun. But I'm still working on my tennis game, so
Yeah, I just
I'll
had to
probably stick
ask
with that.
that. Oh, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. And this narrative definitely, this whole storyline definitely went a little bit different than what I was expecting. But I'm grateful that it did, because I think so often we do struggle with this aspect of we have to be successful, we have to excel at whatever we're doing, and then our eye is on the wrong goal of the success. And that's where I love the whole aspect of your story and switching that and saying, okay, well, maybe it's not fame and fortune. It actually is on people. Rather than the task, it's on people. And I love that you shared with us on that part of it. So thank you for doing that. For those listening, again, this is the last, well, not the last. I mean, we're going to have obviously some more, but I would strongly encourage you this. If you're listening to these things and you haven't seen the YouTube videos, go there, because you're actually going to be able to see a lot more of the interaction and some of the other stuff that's going on. Keep listening. And if there's something that resonates with you, I want to encourage you to reach out both to myself or to Chris or whomever and just say, hey, look, this just really resonated. I actually just had a guy call the other day and he said, man, I just got touched by this story. It means a lot to us. And I know everybody that's on here, Chris included, we enjoy hearing exactly those kinds of stories coming back. And if there's something you want to talk about, again, Chris gave you his contact information. You can contact him. You can contact us. But until the next story, until the next narrative that we have, keep writing and crafting your narrative, because they're all important and you are valuable.